Good morning. I'm Eileen Ullman, and I'm Director of Community Engagement and the JCC Chicago Jewish Film Festival. And it's my pleasure this morning to welcome as my guests Shuki Guzik, who is the director of the film that we'll be discussing today, A Common Goal, and Daniel Ashheim, Israeli Consulate for Public Diplomacy. And wow, before Shuki got on, Daniel and I were talking about the film and how much we enjoyed it. We both watched it with our spouses, and just a fascinating film. So Shuki, I know that you are a documentary filmmaker. That's pretty much been your career, right? Has been kind of based in documentary filmmaking.
Yes, unfortunately, I need to make a living, so I can't do only documentary. So I'm a lot of television also, but this is my passion. This is the thing that I like most, is doing documentaries. It's fascinating.
So let me ask you something. What inspired this particular film? Why soccer? Why this team? Why that time?
First of all, I love soccer. I'm a fan myself, also for soccer team in Israel, and also with the national team. So I love soccer, and I love the way soccer can be, first of all, a tool for mobility in the society, for social mobility, which is all over the world, and for minorities to show themselves. And I think in Israel in particular, it's more complicated because of the Muslim and Jewish conflict, and because of the Palestinian and Israel conflict. And for me, as a fan that goes to soccer games in Israel, I'm always amazed to discover how can the same place can be the most violent and racist place, and in the same time can be the most accepting place. Because you can see fans in Israel that if the Arab player or the Muslim player plays in your own team, so they admire him and they can sing songs and they love him, and in the same way they can curse another Arab or Muslim that plays against them. And I think in a strange way, this is normality, okay? In things that has to do with sport, because you don't judge the people, or try not to judge the people by their religion, only by how much they affect the team, only by how much good sports they are. But as you saw in the movie, it's not so simple. So when I saw that in the national team, there are half of the team are Muslims, I think it's fascinating, because they are 20% of the Israeli society. And if there are 50% of the national team in the most popular sport in Israel, so I think it's interesting, and it was, I think.
Daniel, do you feel like, Shuki says they're 20% of the national population, but, overrepresented in this respect in the team. Is that true about, minorities in general in Israel? Is there more opportunity now for minorities in Israel?
So this film, thank you for the question, Eileen, and thank you for hosting this. So I would say in Israel, we are seeing a few dramatic things that are happening in both directions. So on the one hand, we see more and more integration of the minority groups inside places that they were not visible as they are today. If, let's say, we'd go 30 years back, so your interaction with someone from the minority would have been if you're going to get a service provided, your car, or you would go to mechanics, or you would go to places to meet them. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, so we used to go. I still have my person in East Jerusalem you go to for that. But that used to be what it is. It's more service oriented. In the past few years, I would say the last 20 or 15 years, we're seeing much more integration into higher level thing. When you go to, if we talk about sport that Shuki mentioned before, it's very visual. We saw Bnei Sachnin team, they won the cup, which is an Arab team winning the national Israeli cup a few years ago, which made dramatic history. We see it in hospitals where it's not proportionate the amount of senior doctors and nurses that we see there. We're seeing more and more in academia, studying, and many more high-level jobs. We see attorneys and more. So we are seeing that. On the other hand, we are seeing things that are also challenges that there are still for the integration of the minorities. So Israel is admitting that there are challenges, there are gaps, and therefore the last few years, both in this government and the previous government, they invested a lot of money into bridging these gaps and narrowing them and trying to identify the gaps and how we reach them, whether it's from public transportation to allow women from the village to leave their village to work, whether for infrastructure, for education, for safety and security, for healthcare, and more. So there are, on the one hand, a lot of challenges still remaining. On the other hand, we're seeing a lot of positive tendencies in recent years.
So Shuki, there are two titles, right, for the movie, right? It's different in Hebrew than it is in English.
Yeah.
So a common goal. What goal? What was the goal?
I must say, first of all, that I prefer the English name. I love the English name. I think it represents the movie better. The Hebrew name, by the way, is a line from the Anthem, from the national anthem. Okay, and the Hebrew name represents the conflict that the Arabs and Muslims players in the team don't sing the anthem. And the English name is actually a more positive name because there is a common goal, and the common goal is, first of all, a sport goal. Okay, we want to win. We want to win the tournament. We want to win the game. So Arabs and Jews, we have a common goal. But it's larger than just in the game. I think we have a common goal also in living together in this country. So if we can do it in soccer, if we can do it in sport, maybe there's a chance that we can do it in real life. So this is the goal.
And Daniel, would you say that that's the feeling of most Israelis? Would you say that's how Israelis, the people, like the goal of the society itself?
So I want to refer to what Shuki mentioned briefly in the beginning about the tension between sometimes you feel there are racist comments on the one hand, and on the other hand, they're supporting the same guy. Both of them are Muslim. And I shared with you, Eileen, in our previous call, I worked 5 years when I studied my bachelor's and master's. I worked as a concierge at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. Very high level hotel. We get presidents, kings, film stars coming there. But for me, the most interesting thing was the dynamics between the workers. My boss was an Arab Christian woman from East Jerusalem. My colleagues were Muslim men from other parts of East Jerusalem. We had Bell Captain, who was a settler, so-called. We had Ethiopian Jews. We had Sephardic, Ashkenazi, everyone after the army. And this became, it sounds like a beginning of a joke, but it's not. We had a rabbi coming on the other hand, and you would see the dynamic. And in the middle, we had wars in Gaza. We had operations in the north. And we had bombs blowing up in Jerusalem, and you see the dynamic in the room. And you see that in the beginning, both sides didn't like each other. So they say, oh, this Jew, or they said this Arab. And you see these kind of things. But as time goes and you work with each other, you start saying, I love him, Karawi, but I hate Ramzi, but not because he's an Arab or he's a Jew, but because he's our boss or he's our colleague. And you see the humanization of it is what we see in sport as well. So you don't anymore generalize. So all the Arabs or all the Jews are like that, but you start identifying, and this is the human face of the conflict. And I think the more we learn to live with each other and you see more and more happening, it will, and we see now, first time in Israeli history, we have an Arab party in the Knesset, representing not only in the Knesset, but in the government of Israel, which is in the coalition of Israel, which is an astonishing moment. And therefore, I think in society, there's still, of course, fragments in both sides which less want cooperation. but the vast majority want to live with each other in peace and integrate into Israeli mainstream society.
Well, I think, go ahead, Shuki.
If I can add to it, so one of the things that you see, that you can see in the movie, and one of the things that I felt from the Arab society when we were filming the movie, is they will to be a part. They really want to be a part of the Israeli society. They are proud of their players that play in the national team, and they want to feel a part of the Israeli society. Of course, not everything is always bright, and not everything. And we had the last year was terrible. 6 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, we had crazy riots here between Jews and Muslims, and so it's not so bright. But I think that totally we're moving forward. Like if we look back at what used to be and what it is now, even though there are some terrible things sometimes like this riot and wars, generally I think the society is moving forward. We see more and more Muslim Arabs in the Israeli society, and yeah, that's generally the thing.
I mean, I thought it was interesting, you make the point that in the film that the Muslim players, they're caught between, in some ways, what I think of as a rock and a hard place, because they're kind of, they get negative and positive pressure from both sides of society, from the Arab world and from the Israeli world as well. And so they live in a no man's land in a way. And yet it was interesting that like the team's captain, like his father was a border policeman, it's the reality. It's life.
First of all, about the team captain, the team captain is a Muslim, but is not Arab. Is Cherkessian.
Yes.
Okay, and this is the reason why he was in the army and why his father was in the army also. It's a different minority in Israel, a very small one. They are still Muslims, but they serve in the army. They are not Palestinian. So he's in a different spot than the Palestinian players. But yes, definitely the Arab Palestinian players, they are caught in the middle. I think all Israeli Arabs feel the same, more or less. They are part of Israel. They are enjoying the benefit of living in Israel, but they are still Arabs, and they are still brothers of the Palestinians that live in Gaza and in the occupied territories. So they are caught in the middle. And I think that if you refer to the film starts with this thing that with this conflict that the Muslim players that does not sing the anthem in the beginning of the game. A fact that a lot of people in the Israeli society, a lot of Jewish in the Israeli society see as they think of them like they are not loyal to Israel because they don't sing the anthem, okay? And the captain doesn't sing the anthem. But the fact that an Arab, Palestinian, Muslim player wears a blue and white shirt with the menorah on it, plays under the Israeli flag with the Star of David, this is huge. This is something that is not very easy for them. This is not something that you can take for granted. And in the Arab world, of course, not everybody see it in a positive way. So yeah, they are caught in the middle.
How did you get buy-in from the players and from the team itself? I mean, look, the rest of the team, most of the team, you weren't featuring on the film. You chose who you featured, and so, but the team was there, and I'm assuming that you had to have buy-in from the entire team, not just the players that were featured in the film.
First of all, I chose these three players because I knew that these were the three players that I want to focus on. First of all, Bibras is the captain, is the first ever Muslim captain in the national team. So it was, of course, it was obvious for him that I'll pick him. Biram Kial, the players that plays in England, used to play. He came back to Israel since, but in the film, when I was filming the film, he was the leader of the Arab players in the national team. He's the oldest one from the Arab players and the most important players, and he was the leader of the Arab and Muslims players in the team. And Munas Dabur, the one that I filmed his wedding, is probably the biggest star, maybe the biggest Israeli stars. He used to play in Spain when I was filming, now he plays in Germany. He plays in a very high level teams, first division, top teams in Europe. So I know I wanted these three players because they are really the most important ones. I didn't get cooperation from the Israeli Football Society. They didn't want me to do the film. They were quite afraid from it. They didn't let me film in the dressing room. They didn't let me film. They knew I was filming I was doing the film. They didn't say to the players, don't cooperate or something like this, but they didn't give me an approach, which I wanted to the backstage of the team, because I think they were afraid. So I just focused on these three players. It was something that I choose to do, and also something that I didn't have a lot of choice because I didn't get any other. I couldn't film inside the team, inside the national team. So I decided to focus on these three players. I filmed other players, also Arab and Israelis, but they were cut out at the end from the film, and I used only the footage that you see.
I'm always interested in what's got left on the cutting room floor. I mean, I always think, boy, I want to see what got cut, because I think it's I think for a filmmaker, it's a labor of love and a passion. And it must be really hard to make those hard decisions about what you're going to include and what you're not going to include. But I did like that you included the part of, where the players talked about the national anthem. I mean, I did talk a little bit about it with Daniel, again, right before you got on, because, in America, we have players that take a knee. Okay. So, I think I do in some ways feel like these superstars, these sports superstars have a platform, and they use it. They use it. And I thought it was so fascinating that they said, look, if it said, that, if it was about being an Israeli, a proud Israeli, like proud to be part of Israel, that's one thing. And these players have a choice in whether they want to play or not for Israel. I mean, they have a choice, right?
Yeah, they don't have to do it, although it's good for them. For their career, it's good to play in the national team, but they don't have to, of course.
But there are, as Daniel pointed out to me, there are other countries where there's like a cross in the flag, or there's like where the what is it, the Union Jack, Daniel, that has a cross in the flag.
The Danish flag, the Norwegian flag, the Union Jack. Yeah, many have.
Yeah.
Switzerland.
But I don't know about the anthems, Daniel. Does the anthems as Christians?
God Save the Queen is the UK anthem, and there are atheists who complain that this is not something that talks to them. Other countries have things that are connected to the indigenous who don't see themselves as indigenous. The issue of national anthems, flags, are issues that are debated sometimes. I think in Israel they're getting more focused because it's more appealing, it's more interesting. It's definitely not. It's the only example of a Jewish state, so therefore it gets a lot of focus. Nevertheless, as I said, there are a lot of Muslims living now in Sweden or Denmark. The cross is very visible there. So in America, because religion it's not a religious country, so therefore you'll see Christmas tree. I got explained recently when I visited, we met the governor of Minnesota, there was a huge Christmas tree, but no crosses there, because in government offices you cannot put crosses there, but you can put the tree. So there are a lot of things, but that's in America. In Israel is a Jewish state. It's a Jewish state which embraces its minority, which are Cherkess, which are Muslim, which are Christian, which are Druze, which are Baha'i, many different groups. Nevertheless, it's a complicated model. Every country has its own complication, and in Israel we're trying to find the middle way. And some will put an emphasis on the fact that there is the word Jewish inside the national anthem. On the other hand, it's very rare, and in Israel, in the official education system, there are different branches, one that is an autonomy for the Arab population, Christian and Muslim, they are learning in Arabic literature, history, language, and other things, and they study Quran in the schools of the government. So there are a lot of things that they do have an autonomy, which is less discussed usually, but I think these are, my dog is not stopping. This is the thing of home working from home. So yes, so I think it's complicated, but nevertheless, I think sometimes it gets over-focused from both people. Those who criticize why one doesn't sing the national anthem, but he stands and respects it, like we saw in the film. And on the other hand, people were over-complaining about it. I think people need to see it as more as a symbolic thing and not take it in so much, but everyone has the right to think something else about it.
I think that's the little thing that they can do, the Arab players, the Muslim players. We talked before about them being in the middle between the Arab world, between the Palestinians and the state of Israel. And I think they feel maybe it's the less they can do, you cannot go all the way. They need to stop somewhere. So this is the place where they stop.
So what do you want? What do you want the takeaway from the film to be? I mean, what did, yeah, Shuki, yeah.
I'm at the end, I'm an optimistic. So if you can see the last scene that I chose to end the film with is a scene between Biram Kial, the Muslim player, and Tomer Hamed, a Jewish player, which are very good friends. The family knows each other. The kids are friends, and it's the message. I think at the end of the way, for me, is an optimistic message. If we talked about the name before, this is our common goal. We have no other. We have no other way. We have no other choice. We must find a way to live together. I spoke before about the riots that happened in Israel 6 months ago. So for me, it was for everybody in Israel. It was a very hard time because there was a feeling that things are getting better. Daniel spoke about a Muslim party that is in the parliament now, in the government. And so every time that we think that things are moving forward, that something good happens, always something bad happens and takes things back. What I wanted to tell you is about, the movie ends, but things happened after the movie. So in this riots that happened a few months ago, Munas Dabur, one of the players in the film, he wrote something in the social media about Jerusalem, about Al-Aqsa, about the God will will not let go of this one that wants to take Al-Aqsa or something like this. I don't remember the exact sentence that he wrote from the Quran, and this was very, very, it was a mess in his after he wrote this thing. He had to leave the national team for a few games. He came back, and since he came back, every game of the national team, the crowd boo him every time he touches the ball in the games. All the crowd boo him even after he scored a goal. In one game, he scored a goal, people went out of the stadium. So things are not as good and optimistic as we want them to be. We still have a very long way to go. And you know, the film is, I finished him more than a year ago, but the players keep on with their life. They keep on playing in the national team, and they keep on handling with this complex reality.
But was it, so the question for me is it, was he speaking for all the team when he wrote in social media? Is he
No.
speaking on behalf of himself? Are they booing
On-
all of the, you know what I
No,
mean?
no,
Are
no.
they, is it a, I mean,
Spoke
you know,
only on his behalf, and they are booing only him, not the other players. Only specifically him, because if there's something saint in the Israeli Jewish society, is the army. Like, you cannot say anything about the army, and people understood what he wrote, like he's speaking against the Israeli soldiers, and they don't forgive him for this, not yet.
so do you still feel like, I felt like the film was very optimistic. It left me
Yeah.
feeling it left me with a sense of optimism. And so do you still feel optimistic? And Daniel, what's your takeaway from it? So Shuki, you want to tell us, and then Daniel?
It's like, for me, and I think generally in Israel, it's like a tango, you know, we move step forward, 2 steps backwards, and things like this. 6 months ago, if you would ask me, I wouldn't be optimistic. I would be very pessimistic. Time has passed, and you see that life goes back. And 6 months ago, I couldn't go to Jaffa in Tel Aviv. Okay, I was afraid to go there. After a month, after 2 months, everything goes back to normal again. So I'm optimistic again until the next round. I don't know.
Daniel, what do you
I
think?
think I'm a diplomat. I get paid, not a lot, but I get paid optimistic. So we have to always be optimistic, and we have to always believe that there will be a better future, and we will continue to work together. And I do believe that generally, not only for the sake of saying. But I agree also with Shuki, we are going all the time. The living in Israel is something one has to understand. It's very, very, very different. You wake up one day, this is the news. You wake up the next day, you forget about the news of the day before, but somewhere in your collective memory is built. So, and it's formed for both sides. So the example I'll give now, the riots that Shuki mentioned before, I had a friend, very close friend of mine, who slept, he did an engagement ceremony in a hotel in Akko, a beautiful hotel. And he was there in the middle of the night. They put the place on fire. There was an 80-year-old Jew who was murdered there, and they were rescued by other Arabs living there in the middle of the night, that they won't be slaughtered. So on a personal level, that struck me. He phoned me that night to tell me how he felt. And I was here in Chicago, and seeing the footage from the cities that we all love and go to. So if it's Yafo, if it's Akko, if it's Lod, if it's other places that we see, the mixed cities, so-called, and we see what's happening, you say, how will we ever live through this again? And I spoke to my parents, who are a bit older than me, as you can imagine, and they said, we remember this, we were here in the 67 war, we were in the 73 war, in the 56 war, and we lived it. I lived through the second Intifada, where there was every day 3 different explosions, bombings of a bus, a coffee shop, university. It was like a Russian roulette. You woke up, you said, how will we ever overcome this? and we're a strong society, we are. And you overcome things, challenges come and go, but all together we have to believe in the future together. We will be here together. And I think Israeli society is resilient, strong, and can overcome a lot of different challenges.
Yeah, I agree. We have no other choice.
Right, right. I mean, I'm in agreement, and I think about what goes on here in America and in Chicago, and you know, we've Shuki, I don't know if you know, but you know, during COVID, like lots of challenges in the city of Chicago and our downtown area, and there's days when I despair, but on the whole, I believe that you know, you have to be optimistic. You have to be optimistic. So let me ask you something, Shuki. Will you follow up on this? Will you down the road make another film?
About
Or what? I know you'll make another film, but will you make another film
of
about
course.
this particular issue?
I don't think so, and the truth is that it's not really up to me, you know. Every time that you make a film, especially, I don't know how it is in America, but in Israel, you have to convince a lot of people to support you. And it was quite hard the first time, and after this thing has been done, this film, I don't think in the near future I will do a follow-up for this. I don't think so, no. Actually, I must say the truth, nothing new really happens. If I will go and do the same film, if I'll start, there's a new tournament starting. If I'll do again the same film, it will look the same more or less. It will be all over again. People talk about the anthems, people say, why you don't sing the anthem? Then they start playing, then an Arab player will do a mistake, then the media will provoke things. It's not new, and it's, you know, it will be, I don't think it will be any different from the film that I made.
I mean, truth, like if an Israeli player makes a mistake, they don't boo him. They don't, you know, he doesn't take heat for it.
They will boo him, but they will not say, you did this on purpose because you are not a loyal Israeli. And there's a big difference. They can say he's a shitty player and he's not good and he doesn't need to play in the national team. Fans say this all the time, but they will never say you did this on purpose because you are Arab and you want to fail the national team. It's a big difference, I think. Because the question is loyalty. Are the Arab players loyal to Israel, to the Israel team? And also a lot of Jewish, not the majority, but a lot of people think, there are a lot of people in Israel that if you ask them, they will say, yeah, I think only Jewish player should play in the national team. It's a Jewish, it's a Jewish state. Arabs are the enemy. I want to see only Jewish. I know a lot of people that will say this. Again, the majority don't think like this, but there are a lot of people that do think it.
I don't know. I mean, you know, I think there's racist people in every society, and there's, you know, right? Like, hopefully they're not the majority, but in every society we have that, right?
Yeah, but not in every society. There's you asked about things cutting out, finding themselves on the floor of the editing room. In one of the games, in the halftime of the game, there was a special news break about missiles shooting from Gaza to Israel. Okay, missiles were landing in Israel during the game. In how many places something like this happens? That there are Palestinian players in the national team while there are Palestinians brothers bombing the country that they are playing for. It's more complicated, I think.
But Daniel, you're optimistic.
I am, I think, but what Shuki said is also the fact that we are dealing with these challenges means that there are no other countries that deal with certain things. And while still, in the meantime, you are seeing their active engagement. So a lot of people criticize, they say Israeli society is racist. I hear that here in Chicago all the time. The apartheid state, racist, colonialism, ethnic, all of these claims are heard. In universities, I go all over the 9 states we are covering in the Midwest. And to say that is just not only it's false. So there are, of course, racists. Whatever happens will be racist. They'll continue to be. They are existing. I know them myself. Also, they are there. But racism in many of the countries is caused by ignorance and not lack of knowledge and not even having interactions. Anti-Semitism in many cases is the strongest where there are no Jews and never been Jews. So, and there are other places, other societies. In Israel, what we are seeing is there's an active, I wouldn't say always high war, but there is a hostility between certain groups challenged for many, many years already. And it's an active conflict. And despite being in an active conflict, the fact that we see so many islands of strong cooperation is extraordinary. So we can look, and of course, someone says, oh, you dirty Arab. And I saw in Shuki's thing, sometimes I felt uncomfortable seeing that it was emphasized with a tweet here, an Instagram post there about some place. It's true. They are there and they're racist. They will continue to be there.
Right.
But if we look at the other things, the fact that they are there in the team, they are, despite the challenges. And now we see new peace agreements with Arab Muslim countries, whether in Morocco or the UAE or Bahrain. So people used to say they're racist, but now you see people hugging them coming from the Gulf countries. It's like the new coolest thing in the world to go to Dubai for parties. Now it's a Muslim country. I was there on a honeymoon with my wife in 2017. It was not allowed for Israelis to go there. I needed to bring my foreign passport to get in. And now there are direct flights of El Al Israeli airline plus the UAE airlines flying on Bahrain Air to Israel on a daily level. So we see things are changing. So I want to emphasize is that it's not a racist society. There are racist elements in certain people, but you see there are, this is an active conflict and this is caused by this active conflict. And even if we're in the middle of this conflict, you see a lot of so many optimistic things, and we should definitely all be optimistic.
I'm in. I mean, I'm in agreement. I think, you know, like I said, you know, there's racists in every society, but I hope, and I am optimistic as well. So Shuki, what's your next film?
What's my next film?
What do you want to do?
You
must have something that you want to do.
Yeah, I have a lot of things that I want to do. I cannot talk. I'm actually on a few things right now. I'm still looking for the right story. So nothing, unfortunately, that I can really share with you. Okay, but they are not connected to sport, not connected to Arabs, almost different topics, but not something I can share yet. I'm checking on some stories and waiting for to see what will happen with them.
Okay, well, we'll be watching for what's next.
Yeah.
Definitely be watching for what's next. And in the meanwhile, it's, you know, we were worried in the beginning of COVID. We wondered, would there be film? Would there be film to show? Because, you know, so much of the resources had to be put to COVID, obviously. And so we're thrilled that, you know, as we're looking towards a new film festival in the spring, there's lots of film coming out of Israel. And so, you know, it's very exciting. It's always exciting for us. And so we'll look forward to seeing what your next film is. And Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for this event. I hope to see you all in person.
Yeah, we all would like to see each other in person, right?
You know, there are films, but there are only online film festivals. This is a big.
That's true. It's been and it's not the same as a film festival that runs in person.
No.
It's never the same. The truth is, as somebody who's run a film festival, and next year will be our 10th year, there is nothing like the community coming together in the movie theater. And the discussion is people leave a film and they're like walking past the people who are coming in to see the next film, and the exchange of ideas and thoughts, there's just nothing like it. And so actually the Chicago Jewish Film Festival will be a hybrid film festival in the spring. We're hoping because we know for some people it's meant that they can't join us because the technology just is beyond them. They're not comfortable with the technology of a virtual film festival. And for some of us, that experience of sitting in a movie theater, in a dark movie theater with other people and, you know, reacting along with others, like they're missing that. And so we're excited to at least try to be a hybrid film festival.
Yeah. For me as a creator, it's always, I want people to see my films in a movie theater when it's black and everything is quiet, but it's always better.
Right. Well, we, you know, look, we'll end on an optimistic tone all the way around. We hope for better things. We hope that everybody, you know, stays well and that we see an end to this pandemic, and you know, we hope for better things for society in general, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for joining us. Thank you to the audience for joining us. And everybody have a wonderful day. Stay well and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.